through the first half of the month. I can't just believe how quickly time's rolling on, It was over a year ago that we stopped our weekly classes, and then I started doing videos this year. Can you believe I've done over 300 videos? But I'm grateful that you're watching, and I'm really hoping that now COVID seems to be easing, and we've got some some people have been vaccinated, and I think there's a general change in situation. So we're hoping to have some good news for you about the class before long. I know that around the world things are changing, mostly for the better. I read yesterday that Israel is opening up, or is planning to, and they're no longer requiring their citizens to wear masks. Masks are being done away with in Israel. But I also read last week that India is now one of the hot spots, and they had 100,000 new COVID cases in one day. So, wow. We've got a lot to be grateful for, but we've also got a lot to keep praying for, because we've got a lot of dear friends who are in India and associated with the work of God in that part of the world. So keep praying for those folks. Well, yesterday, I talked to you about decisions. I talked to you about the impact of decisions that we make. What we decide to do affects our tomorrow. And some of us today are living with the results of decisions we made yesterday. Some of those decisions were good. I know that some people have made lifestyle decisions. They've made decisions about exercise. They've done decisions yesterday that are good, and then there are some decisions that we made yesterday that are not so good. We're living with the results of them. I know that some people today wish they'd taken better care of themselves yesterday. I know somebody said that if I'd have known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. And that probably is true for me too. But when I started thinking about all that, I realized that I rarely have made it a topic of prayer to ask God to help me make good decisions every day. We just make decisions on the fly, on the spur of the moment a lot of the time. And I know some major decisions we take to the Lord and we pray over them. But what about all the other stuff that goes on? How about we make it a topic of prayer, that God will help us, He'll guide us? I think sometimes, and I mentioned it yesterday, but sometimes we need to recognize that we don't need to ask for divine guidance when His word is clear. We don't need to ask for something, ask for His help to do something that He's given us the tools to take care of ourselves. I'm not suggesting anybody does, but to be praying, Lord, help me lose weight, but then not try to eat less, that doesn't make any sense. So yes, we need to help. We need to ask Him for help, but we also need to recognize that He's given us guidance. And I believe that we need to come daily to Him and ask for wisdom. And I told you yesterday that phrase that I read, decisions determine destiny. I like that. What we do today can have a profound impact on our lives, not only on our lives, but on those we care about. And so yesterday I told you that, and I don't know if I told you, but I read a message that really impacted me, and it was based on Ruth chapter 1 and the first 5 verses. And so yesterday I read them to you and said, okay, read these 5 verses and see what comes out of them, what lessons you pick up in just reading the verses. And so I'm going to start on that. I don't think I'm going to finish today. In fact, I know I'm not going to finish today, but I'll come back and talk about it next week. But verse 1 of that of Ruth chapter 5 says, "Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land." So let's stop right there. I want you to know that famines will come. Now, I'm not, you understand, I'm not just talking about famines, but stuff will happen. We cannot control what's the environment. We can't control what might happen tomorrow. So that's one of the reasons that I think when we make decisions, we need to be asking the Lord for wisdom. I think we don't know the future, right? And so if the plan that you make relies on there always being plenty, then I think you need to be careful. Why? Because it says it came to pass that a famine came, and guess what? Famines will come. And it says then, a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. So I want you to know, first of all, that Elimelech was a Hebrew. He'd been taught about the provisions of God. He had read the stories of how God delivered his people. Now at the time of Elimelech, the Old Testament hadn't been completed, but he did have the Pentateuch. He had the first 5 books of the Bible, and he knew the story, and the story is recited by the Jewish people, so they knew about Passover. They knew what had happened. And yet Elimelech here, as we see, made a decision. It was a life decision, but it seems to have been based on, what can I say, human wisdom. It was based on looking around. And what did he see when he looked around? What he saw was a time of famine. And so he made some decisions. As we get into this, I want to talk about a little bit about some of the names involved in this story, because names in the Bible always mean something. They're always significant. And if you don't know the meaning of a name, then you don't understand the significance of it. To understand why was Abram renamed Abraham. If you don't know the meanings, then you're not going to understand it. So we miss a great deal. Well, if you see a name that starts with El, you know it's significant, because El is part of the name of the Lord. El Shaddai. So here's a guy whose name is Elim, Elim, Elek. And that name actually means, my God is king. Or perhaps it could be rephrased, God is my king. Now, my name's Doug, and you call me Doug, and that's just a label, right? But what would it be if my name actually meant God is my king? And when you came to me, you said, hey, God is my king. What are we going to... You understand? In reciting this man's name, people were making a profound statement, or he was making a profound statement. What a great name to have. Imagine going to the marketplace, and as he made his way through the marketplace, people coming up to him and say, hello, God is my king. Well, what's the point? The point is that his name made a personal statement about what he believed, or it should have done. That was his name. But if you read this story, Elimelech did not live up to his name. He chose to rule his life, or he chose, at least in this case, to make a decision based on what he perceived was going on. And so he made a decision to leave Bethlehem of Judah and go to the land of Moab. So I want to ask you a question. Where are God's people supposed to live? Well, in that day, God's people were supposed to live in the promised land. He'd made that clear through Moses. There's countless scriptures that talk about this being the land of promise. This is where people were supposed to be. And, I think it's worth saying, well, where are we supposed to live? Well, we're supposed to live in a position of trust. We're supposed to live under the rulership, under the kingship of our God. But what did this man do? Yes, his name says God is my king, but he trusted his own decision-making power. He said, okay, well, I know that I give, through my name, I give consent, I give assent to the fact that I'm moving under God's direction, but I'm going to make a decision. And guess what? God gave us the ability to do that, right? He gave us free will. He doesn't just pull our strings. He says, this is where you're supposed to be. This is the land I provided. These are the promises that you can live under. These are the directions that I'm giving you. But he doesn't make us do it. He says, okay, I've given you free will. You can make your own choices. But guess what? With every choice comes a result. And I think sometimes in his mercy, God reaches down and, well, he just grants us mercy. He doesn't give us what we should have got as a result of the decision that we made. Sometimes that's what he does. But to rely on that when God has said, this is what you're supposed to do, I think that's very dangerous. I think it's equally dangerous for people to live in a manner that requires God's miraculous intervention every day. I've told you, I think it's not appropriate to ignore common sense and then rely on God's miracle intervention. God is gracious and he's merciful, but he gave us common sense. Well, where was this man from? He was from Bethlehem. And do you know what Bethlehem means? Bethel is the word for house, right? Bethlehem means the house of bread. So where was this man? God put him in the house of bread. But guess what? From time to time, even in the place where God plants you, what happens? Famines come. And so what did he do? He got up, he took his wife and his 2 sons and he moved out of the house of bread. And where did he go? Well, it says that he went to Moab. So go look it up. Do a scripture first, a search on Moab. Psalm 108 verse 9. You're going to love this. God said, Moab is my washpot. So what's that saying? In God's sight, Moab is like a filthy pot where people wash their feet or they do the dishes or whatever. This is not a place of blessing. This is not the house of bread. So Elimelech left the place of bread and he went 30 some miles, but he went to a place that God has described as a filthy washpot. Guess what? He'd have been better off staying in Bethlehem. He'd have been better off staying there because Bethlehem was the place that God had designed for him. God had prepared for him. And instead he thought, no, I don't know that God's got a handle on this because there's a famine. So what does he do? He disregards and he disobeys the directives of God and he moves out. And guess what? The result wasn't real good. And that is always the case, where we are told by God to do something and then we turn our back on it. Or we think, okay, well, God's given me the ability and I know that place down there 30 miles away is a whole lot better than where I'm at. I'm going to go. And guess what? God says, okay, have at it. So, as we think about this, I think we need to be praying, Lord, help me to stay and be where you put me. Lord, help me to have the faith that at the first sign of famine or the first sign of trial or tribulation, we're not going to get up and run. Because guess what? When we make decisions based on our rationale and based on what we think, we're taking ourselves out from the place of blessing and the place of promise. So, some things we don't need to pray about. And when God has given a direction, he's given us a command, you don't need to come back and say, well, let me think about it. Lord, give me great wisdom. God gave us rules. And I could I could go on about this for a while. I could make this into a full-scale Sunday lesson. It's not intended to be. It's just a thought for you today that every day we need to be making decisions based on His Word. Every day we need to ask Him for wisdom. Every day we need to realize that what we do today can impact tomorrow. And that by God's grace, by His mercy, we're living where we are today. And in some cases, despite the decisions that we made yesterday. So that's my word for you today. My word for you is let's ask Him for wisdom. Let's ask Him for insight. Let's ask Him to give us the determination and the faith to look beyond the famine and to see that this is indeed a place of blessing. Because as we'll see, this famine passes. I'm not going to read the verses to you, but you'll see that there's a time when this famine is over. And now where is He? He's not back in the house of bread. He's in the wash pot. Well, I could preach the whole thing or teach the whole thing today. I don't want to. All I want to do is say, looking forward to seeing you soon. Not this Sunday, but hopefully very, very soon. And reach out today. There's a lot of people hurting. You know a lot of them. You see the daily prayer requests. So just give God thanks, give Him praise, and stay in the land of blessing. Stay where God's planted you, even if you're in trial, even if there's tribulation, because this too shall pass. Love you all. I'll see you, what is today? Today's Friday, so I'll see you Sunday. All right, be blessed. Bye-bye.